and welcome to this week's session where we've got Jeff and Cody along, who are going to basically walk us through what they're doing with webinars. I mean, I spoke with, back in the last year, I spoke with Jeff and Cody. They were just sort of off the cuff saying some of the results they've been getting. And I think in the last session of the year as well, they put in the chat box some of the results they've been getting. And a lot of it's been fueled by what they're doing with webinars. So, kindly asked them if they would share the process, how it's working, how it all pulls together to share with you guys. That's what we're going to basically go through today. So I know they've got their, what they want to talk about prepared. But as we go along, if you've got any questions, you need clarity on anything, use this as an opportunity to suck as much information as you can out about webinars. I think, just for context, I think it's one of the, I think last year was a big profit source, but I think, going into 2021, it's going to be an even bigger profit source for you in your business. I think if you're not utilizing them properly or not utilizing them at all, you're sort of leaving money on the table. Just for some context about Jeff. So we know Jeff from another mastermind group we're part of for coaches. So Jeff has got another business. Or Jeff, is this one other business you've got?
Got the recruiting business, and then I also do coaching for 7-figure digital marketing agencies.
Perfect. So yeah, on the other business, Jeff is a really good marketer. Knows what he's talking about when it comes to lead generation, all things marketing, online marketing. But yeah, he's sort of translated what he knows from his other company into what he's doing in his recruitment business, and it's really powerful stuff. How long have you guys been running webinars in your recruitment business?
1 year.
1 year. So we're just at the beginning of last year you started doing it. And can you sort of, just for context, tell us a bit about the results you've been able to get and how it's helped you up to this point, and then we'll get into the how.
Well, first you have to learn a little bit about Cody and myself to understand this. It took me 1.5 years to convince him to do it. Okay, so that's the first thing. So I share that because you have to get past all of your bias, your head trash, whatever you want to call it, around. I don't look good on camera. I don't know who I will invite. All of those types of things. The biggest
very
result,
quickly, Jeff, I'll just be interested from Cody's point of view. What he saw is what was holding him back. What was this? What were the? I'll use the word excuses that you were using as to why you shouldn't do it. Just be interested from your point of view, Cody.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me, it was just my mindset, right? I didn't know that I just saw the value of it. And the other is I tend to be a pretty humble person, and I don't want to be the expert out there and the guru saying those things, right? So that kind of head trash and mindset is the stuff that kind of made me go, I don't want to be that person, right? Because I'm a production recruiter, and recruiting, and it's like sales and marketing, right? The salespeople are always saying, marketing's not really doing anything. And I had lumped webinars and things like that into the same bucket as just vaporware and marketing and just talking, and it wasn't delivery. And so I had that in my mind of, I don't want to be that guy, right? So the biggest thing was just my own mindset of being a more marketing related person. Now I love marketers, and I love digital marketers, right? I just love them to death.
just very quickly, what Cody said there, can anybody else relate to what he said there? He doesn't want to be seen as a guru. And just type yes in the box if you can relate to what was holding Jeff back, if you think that may be impacting you as well. Just type yes in the box if that applies to you as well. Yeah. So as you can see, Cody, you're not alone in this. And by the way, Drew and I, this would apply to Drew and I initially as well. And your own, really bluntly, your own BS gets in the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's before we did the program. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
Let's first talk about where the heck and how the heck do you get guests? Because we recommend for this group especially to do it through a guest type interview format. There's a lot of different ways that you can do webinars. You can do Q&A and everything else. But if you're in a niche where you have specialists that talk in the niche as well that are, you know, recruiters or hiring managers, doesn't really matter. There's somebody in everybody's niche that's well known. You know, in our case, I'll let Cody share who he's got lined up here for 2021. So.
Yeah. So getting the guests, when we did our first webinar, I'll just share the first one. The first webinar we did, I know a lot about diversity recruiting and how to do it in big organizations and how to do it in smaller organizations. So our first webinar was me doing it, right? It was a talking head kind of PowerPoint related webinar. I wasn't as comfortable with that, very comfortable with the content, but just talking into the camera wasn't really my thing. And it came across in the first webinar that we did. But after that, we decided to go to, let's use my network of people that I know already and get them as the guest, because one, there's less preparation for me. Even if I'm an expert in that topic, if I get someone else who's known in the space, let them talk about it, ask them the question. I still have the opportunity to contribute and share my expertise, but it's not all on me. I think someone did a presentation not long ago about building on the shoulders of giants, and that's really the approach that we've taken. And so last year, I started with people I knew that were willing to do it. They were heads up, and they were in our we're in a diversity recruiting niche. And so these were people that could talk about that with some authority. They could talk about building cultures of recruiting. So our target person, we've got the head of HR. We do probably opposite of what most companies do. I want to go for the head of recruiting and the head of HR as the person I need to impact, because they know more about every role in the company, whereas the hiring manager knows about their one role and the way our model is set up. So I'm not going to talk about anything, around that. We want to be friends with them. And then so I just brought in guests who were heads of recruiting, heads of HR. This year, we've upped the game, right? We've decided, let's go for the bigger player. Let's go. So last year, one of my final guests was the chief diversity officer for Walmart. His name's Ben Hassan. And so got him on as a webinar because I've known him for a while. And now starting out this year, we're going with the president of the Deloitte Foundation, who just left the Deloitte Foundation, the president, but that's our first webinar guest. Got the chief diversity officer for McDonald's Corporation as a webinar guest. Got a very high level executive coach who's fairly well known in the industry as another coach. So we built out, we're in a totally different position than we were last year when Jeff was pushing to start.
Cody, just out of interest, how do you go about getting these guests? You've got some big hitters there.
So I'd say the first place to start is just start with some relationships that you have so you can get the jitters out on those first couple of webinars, right? Because you got to start doing it. Just taking the steps and doing it is the key. And so I just reached out to people I knew that were in my network and said, would you be open to being a guest on an upcoming webinar in 2021? And so what I've been doing is just reaching out to the bigger players now, ones that I don't know as well, and saying, love your background. I read some content or I watched your video. Would you be open to being a guest? And so I use a similar technique that we use to prospect, right? Let me make if I don't have a connection already, I'm going to make a connection on LinkedIn. I'm going to thank them for the connection. I'm going to make sure I know a little bit about what they're doing. I'm going to reach out and say, would you be open to being a guest on a webinar in 2021 or 2022, right? I want them to know that we're not just doing this little thing. We actually are playing it out, and I've got to get you scheduled in to be on as a guest on our webinar. And so that's been my approach this year, which is totally different than last year. Last year, I just used my personal network, which is pretty big, but this year I'm using that put it out there. It's exclusive. We're not reaching out to everyone, but identified you, and I saw your specific content on this.
And on that, Cody, for every 5 people you invite, what percentages actually take you up on the offer?
I have a pretty high hit rate. I would say it's probably 50% of the people, but that's awesome. Because I'm in a specific niche I've got a lot of credibility in that space. So when they look at my profile, they look and they say, oh, wow, this person is connected to other people like me, right? But
yeah.
I would say,
sorry, yeah, that's just very quickly. Just want to go to the everybody else. Two things. One, it's making sense, but more importantly, could you see how you could do this? Just yes or no in the box. If you can't, let us know. We'll answer your questions. But what Cody's just done there, he's asking 10 people, he's going to get 5. He's creating scarcity. Can you see how you could do this in the next month or so? So we're getting, yeah.
and I would say, you know, it's always hard to feel like, oh, I don't have anything that people are going to want to hear, because what I do, like a lot of recruiters, everyone already knows this stuff. Why do I need to say that? Jeff and I go back and forth on this all the time, where he's saying, I always say, that's table stakes. Everyone knows how to do that if they've been doing this for any period of time, but it's not true. And so what I do is I think about what is a question that my target audience is trying to answer. And I do a little bit of research to figure out what the questions in that industry are and what the questions are. And ours happens to be recruiting. And then my guests address those questions, because everyone doesn't know, and they show up for these webinars. And numbers, don't worry about the numbers in the beginning, because our first webinar, I don't know, I think we had like 24 people on there. So I was like, oh man, that kind of sucks. But don't worry about the numbers, because the value of the webinar and recording that webinar, you're going to be able to chop that content up and use it in the future for articles. And I'm fortunate because I've got my own personal digital marketing coach. Jeff is a digital marketing professional, so I've got that. But you don't have to have a Jeff, right? You can. There's a lot of information that Terry, you and Drew, and you guys are putting out here that everyone can use. And so the good thing about this group is we're willing to share. And so just getting started is the key, and then learn from that, you know. So
Excellent. Excellent. So one thing I've taken away from there is that to do this, you don't need a Jeff. It's a key takeaway from so far, Cody.
Yeah, sometimes I'll loan him off to you guys, because he's a little bit much to have all the time.
Michelle just said, great.
Before we get done today, we've put together a step-by-step process, so you'll understand exactly how we do each step along the way. So you'll leave this morning with that.
Awesome.
Okay, so we spoke a bit. So basically, to get guests, you're essentially using the 3-step process, but the third step is, rather than do you want this ebook or do you want this client magnet, you're saying, hey, look, I'm doing a webinar. Would you be open to becoming a guest? You get about 50% of them say yes. They're open to it. Where do you go from there?
Yeah, and then on the back end, Jeff, and I don't know if you want to talk about the process on the back end, but we've got a process on the back end where so the next thing I do is I schedule time with them, a short 30-minute conversation, just to explore what are they most comfortable talking about. Because a lot of the people at this level, they have been doing their, I'll call it their stump speech for a while, and they're very comfortable with the content. You make it as easy for them as you possibly can. And I'll let them know, look, we're going to handle all the logistics on the back end. We're going to record it. We're going to walk you through. We're going to get on, you know, and kind of walk them through that. But I really want to understand, what is it that they want to talk about? And I help them. I mean, I help frame what they want to talk about, because I tell them a little bit about, here's the audience. Here's some of the challenges that they're dealing with. Here's some of the questions that they would like to have answered, right? Because I've already ahead of time researched a little bit more about the potential target attendee, and I want them to be able to kind of talk about that in their space. And then I hand them off to Kristen and Jeff and the team that we have, that, you know, getting their bios and all those kinds of things.
Perfect. I think an important point you made there, and you know, me and Terry have been guests on podcasts or webinars before, and so you're making it as easy as possible. You're basically making sure that you make the guests look good.
Yes.
And we've been on webinars before. None of them been particularly bad, but the ones where we look really good because the guests ask questions and ask things that we want to talk about, we're more keen to promote those ones.
Yeah.
I think it's important that, one, you make your guests look comfortable, but also the better you can make them look, the more likely they are going, you know, to share it out with their network and put more energy behind it. So then obviously you can get some prospects that way as well.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly right. Especially if you've got a guest who has done a few presentations, right? You might not get the top person, but you might get that second tier person who's doing presentations. They're trying to get their practice off the ground, right? It doesn't have to be the head of some big organization, but if you've got somebody who's trying, they're going to look for opportunities to share. And let's make it easy. So they know what questions I'm going to ask ahead of time. We can't always control the audience questions, but they know what happens ahead of time. They know what we're going to ask. They know the general flow. We get a meeting and we kind of walk through what the flow is going to look like a little bit. But we're both looking at, they know what's coming up, right? I don't give them anything that they haven't heard me talk about. Now the audience might give them something, but because we don't open mic for the audience, they've got to put their questions in the chat box, right? And so if we see a question that we're not going to tackle, then we're not going to ask that question, and we'll get back to them, get back to the person who asked that question. And so we make it a little bit fun in the sense, I mean, sometimes a hard question, sometimes we intentionally put a really hard question in, right? And so the really hard question, the guest sometimes throws it back at me, right? So I want to make sure I'm prepared to answer any questions as well. And so I think the key is just to have fun with it and to do the first one. Once you get the first one done, just getting started and what I try to follow is the processes that you guys have set up for prospecting, because it's a similar process. And then the stuff that Jeff and I have done, Jeff has, kind of coached me on some of that stuff, but you are the expert and people want to hear from you. Case in point, joining and learning in this has accelerated our ability and my confidence in going in and doing webinars, because I watch Drew and Terry and Mike and Darren and all the people that contribute here, and it's the same kind of conversation. It just happens to be in a webinar format.
Perfect. Awesome. So you get your guests, you do your best to sort of have them set up so they're comfortable with the process. What next?
Yeah, so then it comes over to what we refer to as the production team, and we do this in a 4-week template so that it doesn't become overwhelming, because everybody, especially you guys that maybe have yourself and just one other, this could be overwhelming if you're not careful. So we break it down and we take each step. So do you want me to share my screen at this point and just walk through that? Or?
Yeah, that's great.
So no fancy presentation this morning, but when you leave today, you will have this document, and it's a complete checklist of what you need to do. So, in the first week of the month, or whatever you consider the first week of this 4-week process, we're prepping the content. If Cody's speaking by himself, what we do is we actually do a quick little 30-minute interview on the topic. And so it's just a way to capture what he's going to talk about, and what comes out of that is a simple transcription of the video. And we use otter.ai to do that transcription. And so our goal in that is to get identified what are the 5 bullet points that Cody's going to cover if he's covering it on his own. Again, he does a similar process when he's talking to the guest. He's looking for what are the bullet points the guest is going to talk about and want to present on. That's what he was talking about a little earlier. We're going to take those bullet points and we're going to use them on a registration page. And at the bottom of this document, I have examples of the registration page, the confirmation page, the video scripts that you have to create. So it's all here. Okay, so now week 2, we build out the landing pages and we add the videos, and we invites start on a Friday for a Thursday webinar. So
Jeff,
you can
just
pick
very quickly, Jeff.
Yep.
Jeff, when you say add the videos, you're creating videos to promote the webinar, are you? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, so really at this point we've just done each of the, let me go to the bottom here. So you have a page here that's called the registration page. We put a video here that welcomes them to sign up. And so I have the script right down here. You know, what day and time, what are we going to talk about? And so that's the case.
And that's my least favorite part. I'll tell you right now, creating those intro webinars, that registration video and that confirmation video, that's the part I complain about all the time, because I'm talking just to the screen. And I tried to do it once where I pick up my phone. Like, I'm a natural on my phone. I'm not a natural right in front of the camera. And so what we've done is I actually do several takes on that video, and then Jeff and the team chop it up, right? They cut out all the bleeps that I've said while I'm trying to get this thing right. As anybody that's recorded anything will know that sometimes is an issue.
So just on that, so once it's, once the final video is done, how long are we talking about in terms of the promo video? How long is it?
These are all under a minute.
All under a minute. This is quick.
This is the entire script. All right, you've registered for the webinar. Exciting. It's going to be awesome. I mean, it's just a very short thanking them for registering is all you're doing. As far as promoting it, we have been running some LinkedIn ads, but we've been using just an image. We haven't actually done any videos at this point in LinkedIn. So we've just been promoting, date, time type of document. We'll be adding videos come. And so to give you an idea, in this document, I've also put the YouTube link to one of Cody's intro videos here. So you're building out the landing pages. Again, all the stuff at the bottom will take you through the layout. The layout you see there is the best layout that we've had success with, not just in diverse recruiting experts, but again, in my digital marketing space where I coach, that's the layout that gets the most registration. So don't have to reinvent anything, just copy what you see there. There was a post earlier about how to get video chopped up, how to build landing pages, all of that. I suggest you find somebody on Fiverr, and you can spend less than $100 getting this all chopped up and edited. So it's not very expensive, but you don't need to become an expert at any kind of video editing software. And again, if you're in a small organization, not the best use of your time. Because I can, for $5 or $10, I can get somebody to clean up a video. So what do we, so we've got that, we've got a landing page, a registration page, confirmation page.
So can you talk to me a bit more about the confirmation page? Because I think, well, two things actually I want to talk about. So one, you said here that if the webinar's on Friday, you start promoting it, or sorry, if it's on Thursday, you start promoting it on the Friday before. Is that right?
Yeah, Friday. Yeah.
So one thing I see people doing in this group is they leave a long time to promote a webinar, maybe like a month or so. Why have you picked that 6-day period? And I guess what are you doing over that 6-day period?
So, I mean, we're sending out emails to a list right now of a little over 5,000, as well as we're running the LinkedIn ad. What we've discovered is attendance is best in about a six-day window. The longer you delay between the invitation and the actual event, people will register, but a lot less people will attend.
Right.
Because most of us can barely survive a 1-week schedule. So to expect them to think 30 days in advance just doesn't tend to work out as well.
Perfect. And then the other thing that you sort of mentioned and showed a picture of there was your confirmation page. Can we go back to that?
Yeah, so we go to the confirmation page. So again, it's just you're registered, here's the date, what's the title. This is Cody, basically, he's just reading this. If you think about it, he's just reading this in a video format. But what's more important here is we have this ability to do what we call a diversity inclusion accelerator session with Cody. So now think about it. They've given you your email, their email address, because they said they want to attend the webinar. And now they're on this page that says, hey, if you're ready, go ahead and schedule an appointment right now.
Okay,
now,
so sorry, carry on.
I was just going to say, so this can either, in this case, where we're at right now, this just goes straight to Cody's calendar. And we're in the process of putting in, you know, a discovery call person, a triage call, whatever you want to call it. So at some point, this will get onto the triage person's calendar to see if it's a good fit to bring them in and have them talk with Cody.
Okay, so I just want to check in with the group. Right. So can you see, so basically what they've done is you register for the webinar, and then on the thank you page, and we sometimes put the payoff page, there's another offer, right? A video of Cody confirming what they've done. And also, look, if you want to book, what do you call it? A diversity and inclusion accelerator session, click the link. So again, I just want to, can you see the difference of one calling it a diversity inclusion, giving the session a name rather than a free call or a call? Can you see the benefit of that and what they've done there? So the prospect understands what they're getting from the call. So give me a yes or no if that makes sense. I think that's an important sort of point there. I'm going to jump off that, giving the session a name.
Yeah. And then you have the complete confirmation page here. So you'll notice here's our 5 bullet points. So it reminds them exactly what we're going to be talking about. And then at the bottom of the page, we have some articles, blog posts, that type of thing that they can go off and read as well. So pretty well covered there. And that takes you through the end of the confirmation page.
So talk to me a bit about numbers. So you've got a list of 5,000 that you're promoting this to, plus you've got your LinkedIn ads. You said that you aim, or did I read that right in the chat box, you aim to get now sort of 75 people there. Is that right?
Yeah. So I think what the most important thing though is for everybody to understand is the real value of a webinar, from my perspective, from what I coach on, is it's about creating content. So, you know, Cody was resistant at first to do it. A year later, we have like 70 videos up on YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay, so we went from nothing to, if we'd have did 12 webinars, we'd have 12 webinars up on YouTube. But because of the process that's included here in this sheet, you're taking those webinars and you're chopping up into little 5 to 6 minute snippets, and then you're also posting them up online. What that gives you the ability to do is, if you have a question from somebody, you can say, you know, in the email, I can say, hey, I can give you the answer, or hey, go watch my video. I recently talked about this on a webinar. And so it's a little 5 or 6 minute webinar versus, you know, here, watch my whole 60-minute webinar, which nobody will do. So it continues to build authority through that video content. And so, you know, I can tell you that in my coaching business, it's not that unusual to have one person on your first webinar.
Yeah.
So don't freak out about that, because I'm guessing, Terry and Drew, that you also have a process of follow-up after the fact. So everybody that registered gets a phone call or an email that says, thanks for registering. Everybody that attends gets a slightly different script that says, thanks for being on the call. Probably, again, followed up with a phone call. So there's a whole follow-up process. And then we post the replay up on our website and integrate it into the navigation menu so they can get to that webinar in the future. So we've also got that. So don't be that concerned about the number of people. I mean, I think that's really important. You know, I'm looking at this morning, we have 20 people here. Is that good or bad? I don't really care. You know, I mean, I've been on these with 35 and 40. So, you know, if I get head trash again, well, we only got half the people we should have here. Now, when this gets done, we're going to have all this content to chop up and use however we want. and it's evergreen at that point, right? I mean, that's the other beauty, is it lasts forever. The other thing that we do with those snippets is they become our blog posts to go up on our website as well. So one of the things I teach is, quite simply, do one webinar a month, and you've created all the content that you need for the month. You've created blog posts, you've created articles, you've created video. You know, it's all there for you to use.
Awesome.
Jeff, just a couple of questions. Sorry, just very quickly, Jeff. What's your call to action in the webinar itself? What do you want the audience to do at the end of the webinar?
Sign up for that diversity and inclusion acceleration session.
Okay, right. Okay. And just to think, you've made some really good points there about the value of the webinar. I really want to endorse what Jeff said there. It isn't about the number of people that attended. Absolutely right. You talked about content. You touched on, we do our webinars. Part of the reason we do our webinars, because we get appointments when they register for the webinar, we give them the option to book in. So we get appointments, sales appointments from it. But the thing that hasn't been touched on yet is just, it positions you as an authority. If you're presenting, even if you're interviewing a guest, you're an authority. It's one of the few times you as a recruiter can get the opportunity. Normally, most recruiters sell one-to-one. And here's an opportunity to sell one-to-many. The follow-up, the content, the blog post, I mean, the benefits are almost endless. And there's so many reasons why you should be doing it. And if you're not doing it, you really are missing the trick. I can't emphasize that enough. Thanks for that, Jeff. Back to you, Drew.
Yeah. Can you just, again, sorry, Jeff, let us know in the chat box what's been your biggest takeaway from what Jeff shared so far. I want to make sure it's sinking in. And Jeff, while everyone's doing that, what I want to get to is, so you're the thank you page, or the confirmation page that you've got, where it says, hey, look, thanks for registering. While you're here, why don't you book a diversity inclusion call? What percentage of people book a call at that point?
It's a relatively low percentage at this point still, but we typically get 2 or 3 people that will book book right from the webinar. Okay, so again, most of them come from the follow-up. They don't come from that sequence, or even right at the end of the webinar. It's when our marketing assistant, Kristen, calls them, schedules them on the calendar, all of those kinds of things. So again, don't be disappointed when you end a webinar if you've only got 2 or 3 people that have signed up into your calendar. But what you know about these 2 or 3 people is they're hyper focused on what you're talking about, and they're starting to, the hand is peeking up, I want to buy from you, it's,
yeah.
And that's kind of the thing that I'm always looking for. So again, it's not huge numbers, but again, our recruiting model is a little different. We work top of the funnel, where we do sourcing is what we do. And for us, a typical contract is somewhere in the $40,000 range and can go as high as $140,000. So I only need like one of those every 4 or 5 months to make the whole effort worthwhile.
Awesome. I just want to read some.
And obviously we get more than that, but I'm just saying, put it in perspective. You got all this content, you're getting revenue stream out of it as well. And then I'm really excited about this year because again, it took us kind of a year to figure out which format worked best for us. Figuring out that Cody hates to be a talking head. Cody loves to interview people, which is really just a conversation, just kind of like what we're having here, and that's the format that we're using going forward. The shoulders of giants concept. Right now the thing is, Cody can name drop all year long and say, last year when I interviewed the head of diversity for Walmart, and as soon as he says that, every potential guest ears pop up, right? They're like, Walmart, you got this guy. I got to be on that webinar. I got to be a guest to set, because remember, those giants that we're talking about, they all subtly compete against each other too. How much, you know, they're getting out there and how much their voice is being heard and what they're talking about. So once you get a little momentum here, it really gets started going. And so again, you know, if you tell me your niche, I can tell you where to find these guests. That's, but most of them, you're going to look in some kind of an association for most people.
I just want to read out a few of the key takeaways from people. So Mike Merrick said his key takeaways: how to use content and repurpose for different things. For Cheryl, it's schedule one webinar a month and make sure the content is relevant. Michelle, we need to make more of the webinar post event. So yeah, Michelle's doing a lot of webinars already, but they're missing the trick with the post event. Adrian, start small and practice while you're growing. Yep, awesome. For Nick's, how simple it is to put together. Jeremy, the last piece about the webinar being the source of multiple content segments to then disperse and highlight. Awesome. For Don, quite a few, but to do more of these. Jeff, Cody, thanks for this overview and sharing your process. Awesome. Giving less pressure with a person of authority to present. Brilliant. Awesome. Darren, Mike, any sort of input to add at this stage? I know you've done a few webinars as well.
I think we've taken a slightly different format from this, and I'm really interested and keen to explore, you know, working this way. And I think from what Cody said about, you know, finding people who are going to do the speaking for you and actually do a lot of the hard work for you, right? So as long as you ask them a few of the right questions, then they'll talk and, you know, get the point across, that then becomes all of your content. So I think actually by getting the right person and getting the right questions in with them, then that drives everything else that you get out of this afterwards. So I think that, you know, something that we'll be looking at is identifying those right people that are going to have something really interesting to talk about and that people are going to want to hear, that then we can then make into interesting content thereafter. So once you get the process right, and I really appreciate the work that you've put into putting the process and all the steps together for us, I think once you get that right, then, as you say, if you do one of these a month, then you've got an awful lot of content and an awful lot of stuff that you can use thereafter. So I'm excited about that.
I think it's, I think what Darren said, I think my main takeaway from here is you do one webinar a month. That gives you content. You can chop it up and you can use it in various different places. It could become blogs. It can become short videos. And I think that in itself is really powerful. One question I got though is in terms of the work that you do, you know, you identify somebody you want as a speaker. In terms of the topic that they want to speak about, are you directing them to that and preparing the questions, or is that part of what they're doing?
Yeah, that's it. So it's a joint effort, right? I try to keep them in the kind of the neighborhood of what we want, what the target audience might want. But I get on and I actually just get on a Zoom with them, record the conversation, and say, hey, what do you think you want to talk about? Let's talk about this. Here are some things that the audiences have been interested in the past. Here are some things happening in current events that would be great for you to address. What are your thoughts on that? And I record it, and then I try to summarize, you know, 5 or 6 different topical areas, and then I go back and create some questions. But I also ask them, do you have, like when we did Walmart, they had a set of questions. This is where they do the work for you, right? They already had a set of questions that he was used to answering, and their marketing person just gave me the questions. And awesome. It was like, wow, that was easy, right? And the other thing about using a person that's out there, I think Darren made the point about they're going to do a lot of the work. They're also going to promote the webinar for you, right? They're going to send out a link saying, hey, I'm going to be doing this webinar. And it also gives you the ability to shamelessly promote, because you could say, hey, I want to share this, had some great information, you know, from Terry Edwards, take a look at this, right? And it's your video, but you're promoting someone else to promote yourself, right? And so that's what happens. And then all their peers, they start to share content from them, because they, you know, they want to look good for their head of diversity. They're like, oh yeah, we're supporting you. Now we didn't pre-promote the webinar internally for Walmart because it would have broke our Zoom, right? We wouldn't have been able to, because if they send it out internally, we would have had too many people, which would have been a good problem to have, but it would have been a bad problem for us because we're like, oh my God, we can't take all these people. And so, but they do a lot of the work for you. And so you're spot on that. This is all about leverage, and you're leveraging that content. You can feed on that content for a while, right? We've got so much video right now that I'm just sitting here going, hey, when are we going to get this content? Like our team can't keep up with the amount of content that we have to turn it into new stuff, right? To some irresistible offer for a prospect, right? So.
Awesome. So for those of you that, you're put off by recording videos and, you maybe haven't done it, or you're not doing it as often as you like, this is another solution for that as well. You don't have to record sort of one-off videos, except for, okay, the registration page and the thank you page, but all of the content is done during the webinar for the rest of the month. And again, you can recycle that for years and years to come, assuming it's still relevant. I had a question here from Don, and it says, are the topics similar on each webinar, or do they differ? E.g., does the diversity of Walmart talk about the same subject as head of diversity for McDonald's?
Yeah, we've had topics. Generally, the topics are in the same topical area, but it's just like talking to someone about recruiting, right? There's so many different perspectives and people have different opinions. I've had webinars where it was the exact same webinar with a different guest, and the answers were different. So it was different enough that people got value out of it, right? And so the key is to create a cadence of the kinds of questions you want to ask and have answered for your audience. And to make it fresh is look at what's happening in your industry, look at what's happening in any kind of current event where you can kind of put a little bit of different take on it, and it keeps your content fresh, and it makes people go, oh, that's not the same, that's not the same message. So they're closely related, but recruiting is so big in our space that we can have totally different topics, but we kind of keep the same audience in mind. And so we want to see, because they're all the attendees are going to be like, what's in it for me? Why would I attend this? Where's the value coming from? You got to have that same mindset with your presenter. What's in it for this presenter to do this, right? And so if you keep that in mind, more about them and what's in it for them and the audience, and what's not about your business. It's kind of like one of the sessions you had not too long ago where you're saying, I think Terry said, don't say anything about your business. Ask about them and learn about their stuff. And I think that's the mindset that helps these webinars bring more value.
Perfect.
And the thing is, Drew, is you do have a general topic that you want to talk about. So, we want to talk about inclusion. We want to talk about, we just recently did one with an expert on disability, so hiring people that are disabled, what's the process? What are the key things you need to be looking for? So, again, go back, what are your hiring managers talking about from company to company? There's definitely a pattern there. If you've been doing your niche for a while, you can easily list out 10 to 15 things that are conversations going on inside that organization. Can be as simple as, do we do group interviews versus do we do one-on-one interviews? How do we prep our interview team to be ready to do interviews coming up during this hiring event? I mean, there just can be so many different things. And then, in our case, we have a list of them. And then because Cody's working on, I don't know what he's working on, 5 or 6 people and getting a date booked, when they raise their hand and say yes, then it's kind of like, okay, on our list, which of this topics would this person fit well under? And they may not fit under any, and then we'll add a topic to the list. But again, please do not overthink this. That's where you get yourself in trouble. If you've all went to the cocktail lounge at night after some kind of seminar and you're speaking to any kind of expert within a field, they have in their head a rant. whether they know it or not. And most of those rants you can turn into a great webinar topic.
Good point.
And
Good point.
they can speak about it because they rant about it all the time, you know?
Yeah.
You know, I hate our company's blah, blah, blah policy. It should be blah, 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 whatever that is. Okay, well, let's talk about why it should be different. You know, what is it doing to hold back the organization from, you know, in our case, because we do a lot of diversity inclusion work, you know, what specifically are you putting in place inside the organization? I mean, that was a big part of the conversation in Walmart of, you know, how are they building pipeline for future leaders inside of Walmart? Because they're a huge organization. So they're not just thinking about filling today, they're looking at filling into the future. So do they have the right internal systems and processes to make sure that they're filling roles that aren't even available yet?
Awesome. So earlier you mentioned that, you know, you view the most important part of this whole process as the follow-up, and that's where you get most of the results. Can you talk to us a bit more about, you know, so you know, you've got the guest webinar's gone live, you've chopped up all the videos, you've got the content. What do you do in terms of follow-up to the people who, you know, attended and who didn't attend and just registered? How do you get them sort of into your calendar so you can move into the next stage of your sales process?
Hang on just a second, let me get back to the document here.
While Jeff's getting that, I'll tell you, one of the things I've started doing is taking after my right fit call or our triage call, I'm able to now follow up with, hey, great connecting. We've already scheduled the next one. Here's some information for you to be able to share with you, and some resources prior to our next call, right? So it gives them an opportunity. So you can pick a point in that conversation or in your workflow for the prospects to actually share additional content around that, and they can just go to the link and they can take a look at it, and it just makes them, it just builds on the credibility piece without you saying I'm an expert, because they're going to see, oh, this person's an expert, they're interviewing this person. That in itself, that association lends credibility to you.
So are you saying that, you know, as part of the follow-up, when you get on triage call and, you know, that goes to the next stage, are you sending them a different webinar that you've done maybe a few months back?
Yeah, it might be one that a topic came up in the conversation where they said, well, we've got a problem with this, right? Because I'm all about trying to find out what problems they're trying to solve. One of the problems they may bring up may not be a problem of a service we're offering, but we might have talked about it on one of the webinars. And so I just send them a little bit of information on that, so that it then gets them thinking, oh, wow, these really are experts in this space. Even though, you know, and I tell them, we stay in our lane. Our lane is to do this, but we can connect you to other people, right? It just, so whether they buy or not, they're going to walk away going, hey, this is a resource that I can actually come back to, and it keeps them coming back to your content.
Yeah.
So we take that video and we put it up on a standalone page on our website. So this will take you to, this video here will be the entire webinar. But then let's say we chop this up into 5 pieces. So there'll be 5 blog posts about each piece. So as Cody's pointing out, depending on where the conversation's going, you have 6 different places that you can direct them to. And so it's a matter of, you know, is this conversation going towards they need to see the whole webinar, or are we talking about a very specific piece? And so you can send them there as well. And so that's what we do with it once it gets chopped up. And then the follow-up part of it, again, it's just simple scripts of what would you want to say to somebody that, you know, let's say they registered but did not show up. Well, do you want to send them the whole webinar, or do you have one of those 5 video clips that was just really amazing, you know, in the webinar? Because there is usually one that's really amazing content. And our thing is we send them just that little 5-6 minute clip and say, sorry that you did not attend or were unable to attend. Here's an example of what you missed. You know, so it can be that simple. And again, remember that can be a combination of email and because I have a marketing assistant that does this stuff, she's the one making the calls, and so she has that same type of script that she's going through. Again, slightly different call if they registered and attended versus they just registered but did not attend. Not dramatically different, but it's there. Coming back up, so we come back to this document and get through it at least. So yeah, every step of the way is here that you need. The biggest recommendation that I have for everybody here is if you do not have a video team or a marketing team, identify on Fiverr somebody that's got, you know, more than 100 5-stars for video editing, for example, and reach out to that person, and usually for $10 or less, you can get your videos edited. So I say, you know, for somewhere in the neighborhood of $100, you can have all your videos created. And if you're going to use a slideshow, because sometimes you do use a slideshow, they'll help you build out your deck and all of those things. So keep this process really simple. When you're co-hosting, as Cody pointed out, we don't do anything to cause the guest to have issues. So like we don't post up, here's the 5 questions we're going to answer today. Now we set it on our registration page and we set it on our confirmation page, but when we get there, we're going to guide that conversation. And if it goes kind of in a different direction than we thought it was going to go, we're fine with that too, because it's still good content. And, you know, how we spin it after the fact makes the difference. So then we're in week 3, and in week 3 we're actually doing the event. So we're inviting on the morning of the webinar. You know, an invite goes out one more time, and then one goes out 30 minutes before the actual webinar. Again, you can do text messaging, emailing, whatever, but we're all busy. So I'm going to get my best attendance if I get re-notified multiple times. Once you get that done, you're going to take your Zoom MP4, like I say, put it in a Dropbox, hire somebody on Fiverr, let them edit it down first. So now you've got a nicely edited, you know, 45, 50-minute webinar. And then once they've edited that, have them chop it down even further. Add it to the replay page, and then the replay goes out on Friday. We always try to send it out on Fridays because again, they were expecting to attend the day before. Here's all the steps the last week of your 4-week cycle: chopping it up, putting it up on YouTube, putting up your blog posts. You know, if you've got a great output from Otter, you can just edit it yourself. But if not, we send it off to a writer to clean it up. You know, because you've done the hard part. You've scheduled the person, you've interviewed the person. And I can tell you, the first time I did webinars a couple of years ago, I was still doing these steps here for my January webinar in April. Okay, because it doesn't matter, right? But I need that content chopped up and out. And if I didn't get it done this month, I'm not going to throw that content away. I'm going to keep working at it until I get it all put up. So be okay with that. You've got this for social posting. So you've got lots of new social posts. And then finally, you've got a slide share. Now, something we just started doing last month, you know, and I don't know how this is going to go, and Terry and Drew, this might work for you, but one of the things that obviously during this webinar, we get a lot of questions and answers. And so we've now got a video editor extracting each of those Q&As and turning that into another 7 to 9 minute video of, you know, questions recently asked about disability hiring with expert so-and-so. So I now have another piece of content that I never even thought about having in the past. But, you know, so if you want the highlights of what was talked about during that, I can send you the questions that people were asking. And again, another piece of content. Guess what? It's another blog post done from a little bit different angle, right? You know, what are people thinking about? What questions they're asking? That kind of thing.
Yeah, and I want to make sure, you know, I know we're on coming up tight on time, but this could be a little overwhelming if you're just looking at something like this for the first time. The whole key here is not to think you're going to get it perfect, is to create the content, because content is king. And I remember in one of our sessions, I think it Drew or Terry or someone said, the clients need to see your content and your email and their information, and you can't let them see it if you don't do it, right? So even if you're not doing a full-blown webinar like this, make it simple and just do it. Do the first couple of ones, and you'll know what your problems were, and then engage, you know, somebody like Jeff or Terry or Mike or anybody who's actually done this, and they can help you fix whatever problem is. But the key is to get the mindset of creating that content. I talk about this because I was so resistant to doing this that I don't know where we would be, you know, had I started it when Jeff first asked me to do it. And so don't get overwhelmed by this, the process.
So I didn't get your guys' permission for this, so I hope I don't break the Drew and Terry rules of engagement here, but I'm going to do something kind of crazy I've never done before. But if you donate $250 to your favorite charity, I will give you 5 hours with my marketing assistant to help you get it up and running.
Awesome. That is awesome. Thank you very much, Jeff.
So I put my email in there. All you need to do is send me an email that says you want to do that. Yeah, I'm not trying to make any money on it. I'm obviously going to have to pay for my marketing assistant to help you out, but they'll help you get that first time done. You know, and
absolutely fantastic, Jeff. Thank you very much.
Anytime in the next 60 days. So you can walk yourself step by step through it, and she'll.
Listen, guys, you've got no excuse now. Just no excuse whatsoever. Michelle, does that answer your question? Can we come to you, Michelle?
Yeah, hi.
Hi, Michelle. Good to see you as well. But yeah, does that answer your question and your challenges with the editing?
Lovely to see you, Terry. Happy New Year.
And to you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I need to, because we use Veed, you see, and it does take me quite a long time to keep cutting up and adding, applying and manually looking at the subtitles. So yeah, I'll have a look at Fiverr and see. And Darren mentioned he might have someone as well. So yeah, we'll just look at those options. But the post marketing is where we're not doing enough at all. We do put a few videos out there, but you know, with the mail shop campaigns now, we can do a lot more with it and putting it into 9 words and all sorts of things. So yeah, we really need to get on that, because we did 4 last year, and now we've got some scheduled for this year, and we plan to carry on doing one a month.
Yeah, just very quickly, Michelle, in terms of attendance, you've done 4. What's your average attendance?
So it was between 30 and 40. We had between 80 and 130 registrations for each, although there were some duplications, obviously. I think we've got about 400 new emails from all 4 of them that we did last year. But we had between sort of 30 and I think the biggest one might have been up to 70, but that was just one of them.
Yeah, and just a note on that, the majority of people that register for your webinar will not attend, and that's fine. But Jeff, it's not about the number of attendees at the webinar. It's not about that. So, and don't take that personally. You know, Michelle gave some great examples there. 100 people registering, 30 or 40 people attending is pretty typical. Would you agree with those sort of percentages, Jeff?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're getting 25, 30% of those that register to attend, you're hitting the numbers, you know.
Yeah. But critically, you've got 100 contact details. And for you guys that are saying, I'm running out of people to call them the 10 before 10, these are the people you should be putting in your 10 before 10. They know who you are, they're registered for your webinar. Hey, you're called, can you see how easy the conversation is when you're calling them? And just one other point that I forgot to mention, years ago, before webinars, we used to advocate podcasts, and we used to work with a client based in Staffordshire. And one of the things that he did, his target audience was IT. So he used to reach out to IT directors for them to be guests on his podcast. What he found was, though, he was starting relationships with people that he wanted to have a relationship with as hiring managers. So it was a great route to market. So all you guys, you know, Nick, I know you're sales, reaching out to sales directors and talking to them about being a guest. But whatever you're selling, you know, obviously it's recruitment and search here. Part of it is about starting that relationship. But if you have a conversation about something, you know, about being a guest, you're starting that relationship with them. You can go back to them later on to understand their recruitment and search needs. So just a quick point that chap Nigel I used to work with got a lot of his business just by reaching out to potential guests for his podcast, and it really worked for him. But you can see some of the benefits here, can't you? And just doing that.
Yeah, Jeff and Cody, if you could just sort of summarize the impact that doing these monthly webinars has had on your business, has had on your business over the last 12 months or so, what would you say?
Cody?
Well, from my perspective, it's had a significant impact in building the credibility and establishing us as a leader in the industry, right? As experts in the space that other people want to be with. And so some people have found us, they don't necessarily find us through the webinar itself, but they find us through keyword searches, right? Because some of that content gets changed. We've had more inbound leads to our website, but mostly people are always going to look at your LinkedIn profile, and then they're going to look at your website, and they're going to go, okay, legit or not legit. And it's just given us a level of credibility that we wouldn't otherwise have had. And so it's been an impact. And what the real deal is that's also increased our ability to get the leads and to close the deals, right? That's allowed us to close the deal, because if they're looking at us and a competitor, and they see that we've got content that's useful to them, they're more likely to go, I think this team is going to be more legit for us. And so that's been the impact. So revenue has been the impact for us.
Yeah, so part of this process is a concept of, and we're just beginning the journey of becoming omnipresent, right? So anybody that's searching for diversity and inclusion, hiring, and any variation of that, you know, we're going to show up over time, whether it's a YouTube video. The beauty is when you do this webinar, you can also turn it into a podcast. I forgot to mention that as well. So there's tools that you can strip out the video into a podcast as well. So being everywhere, but give you perspective, in 2019, I think we got 7 leads from our website, okay? Last year, we averaged 4 to 5 every week from our website. Now, we're terrible at asking how they get to our website, okay? It's the thing we're working on improving, but those webinars had to have a direct impact on that increase in numbers, you know? So, but yeah, getting yourself out there, as Cody said, starting to become that leader in your space, that known entity is really a big thing.
Awesome, brilliant, thank you. Just check in, you guys found this useful? Give me a yes in the chat box if you found
Yeah, absolutely
useful. But yeah, thanks guys, really, really good. Really good. And Jeff, are you going to put that document in the Facebook group?
Yep, sure will.
Perfect. So yeah, those of you that ask for the document, it'll be in the Facebook group shortly.
Great.
Well, I want to know is what's the charity you're going to donate, so Jeff and his team can help you with the editing.
The Terry Edwards Benevolent Fund.
Well, it's a good place to start. I mean, you could do a lot worse, Mike.
Yeah.
Terry, just make sure you get your government documents in to set up your your charity, okay? So we don't want to cause any problems here.
Absolutely. Seriously, a fantastic offer by Jeff. Absolutely fantastic. An offer too good to miss. So listen, please take advantage of that offer. Find the charity. What did you say? £2,000 to a charity of your choice, did you say, Jeff?
$250 US or I don't care, pounds or whatever.
Yeah.
As long as your
fair enough.
receipt says 250 of something, I'll be happy.
Yeah. Rand. That's about $10, isn't it? Excellent.
Yeah, but my marketing assistant has been with us over 2 years, so she's been doing, she does all of this kind of stuff for us, and that's something to definitely think about putting in place for you, is some kind of assistant that helps you do your marketing. And I know there's been a lot of different ways discussed about how to outsource that here in the group, but to me, that's a key position in your organization as soon as you can bring that person on board.
Yeah. Excellent offer. The charity benefits as well. Jeff, Cody, absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, experience, and wisdom. A real gem. Thank you. I'd go so far to say, gents, it's probably the second or third best presentation after myself and Drew that we've had on these calls, and won't be too far off there. Seriously, guys, absolutely brilliant.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it. We're here to help this group grow, and we're glad to be a part of it. Yes, I will get my document up. I'll put it up towards the end of the business day, US Business Day, because I'm going to go back through, because as always, when you present, you just like, I forgot to mention this and I forgot to mention that. So I actually have an hour on my calendar this afternoon to re-edit the document, and then it'll be up before I go to bed tonight. So
thanks a lot, Jeff.
Awesome.
Thank you, Cody.
Thank you. Well, that's it for today. Again, thank you, Jeff and Cody. Join us tomorrow for Triage Feeders and Conversion Secrets. That's tomorrow, 3 p.m. UK time. All the event details are in the Facebook group, as always. But until then, take care, take action, and be relentless.